Last night's BBC poll of polls, a weighted average of the previous 4 polls, suggested a 2% Labour lead, with the Conservatives on 37%, with Labour on 39%.
At the weekend we had a lot of Tories worried that whatever was going to happen they wouldn't get back with a majority, and for many of those people these polls will confirm those fears.
Cecil Parkinson found the streets of Newham in East London unpromising territory. He has recently infuriated the present Central Office team with criticisms of their style and techniques.
I do think from time to time we have been tempted from our own territory and onto theirs.
There's also a complaint that John Major has been badly packaged. Instead of emphasising his role as a world statesman in the Gulf War and Maastricht, Mr Major has been presented as the Brixton boy made good, diminishing his stature. Some Thatcherites simply say there's no longer real fire in the Tory belly.
I think the campaign's gone badly. I think it's gone badly because the people who've been running it don't appear to have very strong convictions.
Even at this late stage, the Tory campaign is still concentrating its fire on Labour's deficiencies and on issues which are not preeminent in the public mind. It's an old cliché that oppositions don't win elections, governments lose them. And that's what seems to be happening here.
Well, tonight's NOP poll for Newsnight and The Independent gives Labour a lead of 2%, but Gallup's poll for the Daily Telegraph puts the Conservatives ahead by 0.5%. This is all getting very confusing, Peter Kellner. Can you try to put it in some sort of context?
I think I can, because in any general election, when you get a large number of polls, they tend to spread out. And we've had polls over the last few days ranging from a Conservative lead of 1 point to a Labour lead of 7. Now, if you pull the last 6 polls, including tonight's, together into the BBC poll of polls, what you get is Labour ahead with 40%, 3 points ahead of the Conservatives on 37%, the Liberal Democrats on 19%, and other parties on 4. Figures which would leave Labour as the largest party in the House of Commons, but short of an overall majority.
What about the ratings of the leaders?
Well, what we find on our NOP poll, compared with the beginning of the campaign, is that John Major's rating has slipped back just a fraction, from 53% at the beginning to now 48% say he's doing well as Prime Minister, whereas Neil Kinnock's rating has just, well, edged up just a little. He's still far behind on 37% thinking he would do well.
On we go to this morning's front pages. The Guardian says John Major last night caught the unmistakable whiff of defeat after the publication of the latest opinion polls.
The Telegraph says the Tories are bracing themselves for a wobbly Wednesday as the impact of the polls sinks in. It says John Major now faces a formidable task.
The Times, whose poll gives Labour a 7-point lead, says the party appears to have enjoyed a delayed benefit from its concentration on health.
The Independent says Mr Major is still absolutely confident of winning with a working majority.
The Daily Express, though, says Neil Kinnock seems to be on course for Downing Street.
The polls lead the Telegraph to report some Tories conceding all they can hope for is a hung Parliament. And its main editorial says the Tories' negative campaigning has not been overdone. There should be much more of it. Music to the ears of the Daily Mail, but despite the best efforts of Major, Patton and Lamont, their story yesterday on an alleged secret deal between Labour and the unions just didn't take off. Labour will not deny it is the best the Splash can do, adding the authenticity of the secret documents on which our disclosures were based left Kinnock's team running for cover or huffing and puffing over long-winded answers. Well, I didn't see much Labour huffing and puffing yesterday, not when the Times poll came through.
John Major has proved a bonny fighter, but whether that will be enough to enable him to confound the prophets and win from behind is quite another question. For the moment, his looks like a campaign that started out in overconfidence, went wrong, and now has very little time in which to recover.